for Conquest, as he was saying this morning, again, putting a lot of faith in that deck, does have a lot of merit, because I'm looking at the way these bans break down, and I do think it is significantly more awkward for Bunnyhoppor to deal with than it is for RDU on the other side.
Okay, well, we'll see if it pays off for him and if RDU is going to be gloating or not later today based on performance. But for now, we do have this Rogue versus Demon Hunter matchup with a pretty good opening mulligan from RDU.
You ever seen a better gamer than RDU? That's
Here we go.
Like,
I knew you'd get into it.
RDU just games, dude. That's what he does. He wakes up, he sits down, he draws field contact double Octobot. He is so confident in his transcendent level of skill as a Hearthstone player that he threw an Octobot away. He just doesn't need the other one, Raven. That's how good he is.
On the other hand, Bunnyhoppor's opening is not great at all. He is going to keep Thanos and Fel Barrage. Just to be able to, I guess, clear off some early minions or push early damage. That does seem like a little bit of a strange keep to me.
Have we beaten it out of you? Have you assimilated?
That was on purpose for you, Sol.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to know if you pick it up or not.
Of course I did.
I thought I was going to play Secret Passage then. I was like, wait, what? He is very confident. Oh, it's nearly the turn, Sol. The dream play on turn 3.
Oh, insane. Honestly, not even that bad in this matchup. I think a lot of times it's kind of a meme unless you do have like a cleared lethal setup. But you don't need Arcanist AoE in this matchup, really. Like, just an Immolation Aura is able to clear up most board states that can possibly come down. So I think the one thing that can potentially do some work is if RDU just drops an Octobot on the board, right? Like, that's something that might be useful to have the Arcanist boost for some stuff. But outside of that, I think because the matchup is so wholly focused on racing for the kill, efficient damage is a pretty good idea overall.
If someone played Thanos that turn, I was interested at, maybe I do this too much, but I was really looking at the Chaos Strike. Just draw a card, push 2, get Chaos Strike in the and they said in the Kane pool, in the Jace pool, and just keep it going. But go for the Thanos, obviously with the likelihood that the trade happens with the dagger, which means that he gets a card draw out of that turn anyway, and gets to just retain the Chaos Strike. I just wondered whether Thanos could potentially be more useful later on than a Chaos Strike would be later on.
Yeah, kind of the same argument as the Talented Arcanist, I suppose, though, right? Is that the spell damage doesn't tend to come in that useful, but yes, the argument is very similar either way. Either way, you push a little bit of damage, right? Either with a minion being on board or with the 2 damage coming from the base attack, and either way, you have the opposite resource left in hand, and they both draw a card. So I think they're remarkably similar on those 2 turns. Well, these aren't really the best discounts that RDU has picked up since his absolutely nutso opening hand, but he does get Secret Passage. I suppose he will just be able to chew through those over the next couple of turns, perhaps looking for some more resources for that field contact down the line.
Yeah, and honestly, a discount on a field contact is sometimes worth more now than a discount on multiple other decent cards later on, right? Just to have that much, a little bit more mana available. But yeah, the double Secret Passage, I imagine, is going to be coming very, very soon. Glad you can get some of this stuff out of his hand. Bunny, meanwhile, weird options of, he can remove the majority of this, no problem, but does he even want to at this point? The deck, because the deck has a lot of lifesteal, I don't think he's overly worried about taking 3 next turn, 4 with the dagger.
No, I agree.
Then what else does he do? Is he just going to Hero Power Face pass? Like,
it might just be like Hero Power the Octobot, I-Beam the Octobot, just because it spends a card from the left-hand side of that skull. It's a little bit inefficient because obviously you're paying 3 for a card you could end up paying 1 for quite easily. But at the same time, again, what else are you spending your mana on? Okay, does it the other way around, takes more damage off the board, but essentially the same effect.
And with the Brain Freeze pickup, no surprise to see Secret Passage here. Are you going to just try and... a lot of the time, I think, just dump some cards, right? Got Shroud, that's a big deal.
Shroud Wand is a brilliant outcome off the Secret Passage overall, I would say. I believe he has... Wait, is that one too many cards? I didn't do the check on the hand size before the Secret Passage, so I'm not sure whether or not that would cause overdraw. But even if it would, he could go like Shroud, Animated Broomstick instead.
So there was Coin, Contact, Shadow Step, Passage 2, Garrote. That's 5. Was that it?
Why do you use playing the Wand Thief?
I think he only had 5.
Certainly believes he's fine. Okay.
Oh, and Brain Freeze 6. That was his draw, right? Brain Freeze?
Okay.
I think it was 6. Did I get it right? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how fast is that animation now? Oh.
Yeah, it's specific. I think it's bugged for the person doing it, which makes the animation weirdly fast. I think the opponent still has to watch the full thing, which
the
is
shuffle.
really frustrating.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little bit weird right now. This turn, I am curious about. This is why I wanted to I-beam the Octobot on the previous turn. Because if you had a 1 health minion here instead of a 3 health minion, you can just Immolation Aura to clear the board, and then efficiently play Talented Arcanist, Fel Barrage, all to go face. However, now that I'm looking at it, that doesn't actually help. The reason why I wanted to go down that line is that it dumps 3 cards from the left-hand side of the hand and gets you to that skull, right? Which is goal number 1 in the position. Right. However, the skull turn is next turn, and he does not have enough mana to spend all the cards on the left-hand side. So I think being wasteful with the Immolation Aura, the Fel Barrage, etc., is probably not worth it in that position because it doesn't set up a fast skull. And obviously losing Immolation Aura not against a field contact turn is a little bit scary. So having said all of that, yeah, I think the only thing he can do is efficiently spend his mana on Metamorphosis this turn.
Yeah, I like this. It also opens up the chance that if he sees Jace early, he could potentially just go for an on-curve Jace, right? If he pumps 2 Metamorphosis hero powers to face.
2 Furies in hand already as well.
Double Fury. He's got the Immolation Aura for the turn where he wants to get rid of some to maybe, get the Fel Barrage to face as well.
Yep.
You okay, mate?
I'm so happy. Coin Prep Deep Freeze. Was not expecting this turn.
Kind of like
this
it, though.
Does line up very nicely, honestly, into Fury's hand, into Bunnyhoppor's hand, apart from the Fury, which is going to be a bit of a problem. Don't think you have to worry about that this turn, right? That's going to be easily castable from the left-hand side in a couple of turns' time.
Does he have a couple of turns?
I grow impatient.
I mean, he has significantly less turns if he skulls and just takes 8 more damage this turn.
It's true.
But I understand the argument, right? You're just kind of asking,
just feels a bit slow,
does he just need to go for the outright high roll in this position?
Yeah. Because he has a lot of damage, right? The double Fury to go fit. Well, you can't at the moment, of course. That's probably the biggest factor. But if you can lock them in, clear the board after the fact, and try and just hit a cheap enough Jace.
Time grows short.
What did he get? Vigilant Barrage. Okay.
So it looks like he is going to tank the board this one turn and then clear on the next. Again, just giving himself the opportunity to go for that big high roll. We shall see how this works out. RDU, though, going to go all the way in with this Octobot. Still has another Octobot in hand, which will probably be reserved for later on. But this turn is likely to be quite disgusting.
Yeah, even like a worst case scenario Secret Passage, right, is absolutely fine with 3 mana floating if you have to go for it this turn.
For sure, yep.
Give me that. Look what I want.
Continue to blow up some of your own board along the way. Continuing to make some hand space. Passage will pick up the Penflinger here as well, creating a little bit more hand space. Only 1 mana to play with here. This means at the very least you can just replay the Penflinger. Probably having hit the Prize Plunderer now, just better to fire that one out. Good.
I think it's fair to say RDU is just set up now, right? He's not really too far away. He's got all the cards he realistically will need. He's got the 1 mana Octo, a 0 mana way to proc it. Then Garrote gets so much cheaper. The second Garrote gets cheaper, should I say. The first one's already 0 mana. It's all lining up pretty nicely here, and Bunnyhoppor under a lot of pressure. And with those double Fury's just locked away, and now the Eldraki Warblades, because of that deep freeze from RDU, his options are so limited.
I grow impatient.
Yeah, this is again why I'm not necessarily sure I agree with the Skull turn last turn, because, you know, if you have a 3-turn game plan which involves playing 2 skulls, right? In Bunny's world, he played 1 skull that turn. Now, this turn he has to clear, right? In any reasonable world, the clear happens this turn in just about any pan out, right? Because the water elementals are still going to be there.
Yeah.
So the clear comes down this turn, and then on the 3rd turn, you're then potentially playing a 2nd skull. Whereas if you do it the other way around, exactly the same thing happens, but you clear this board on the previous turn. I'm not clear on what the upside was on the skull play from Bunnyhoppor.
I guess he wouldn't have cleared... Wait, did he leave a field contact? He played the field contact that turn, right? Mm-hmm. Turn after the deep freeze.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have left a field contact up, potentially? Is the issue?
If it had Divine Shield, it would have been a problem, but he still... The one of the cards is still Fury that he needs to dump before the 2nd skull on the 3rd.
Oh, sure. So swing in. Okay,
which could then go into a field contact. But giving the field contact Divine Shield is admittedly a problem in a lot of spots. But you can still draw Fellscream Blast and Aura.
And I don't even disagree with you. I'm just trying to think of ways that obviously, like, there would be a punish, and that you never want a field contact to sit on board for more than the turn it's actually played, because that's when you're definitely losing the game.
And I think that's the interesting argument as well, right? Is when you've seen Octobot and another card kept in the opening hand and you've seen the whole hand get discounted, what are you trying to beat at that point, right? Because I think you expect the other card, when it's not Shroud, when it's not Swindle, when neither of those cards have been played in the early game to cycle, I think you expect that other kept card to be field contact.
Right.
So maybe that is the motivation overall for Bunny, is that he wanted to line up that Immolation Aura into the field contact turn instead. But, you know, I would potentially argue if the field contact's there anyway, you're just too slow regardless in most situations. But you can see here that Bunny is not unrealistically far away from setting something up here. If he had been able to hit, for example, a Jace off the skull, off the original discount, he might have been able to set up a decent race. Nothing else Bunny can really do this turn apart from clear the board and make it as difficult as possible for RDU to kill him. Involves playing Fury.
Yeah.
One of them, though.
He just has to go, right? Like, he just has to push damage and hope for the best, hope he isn't exactly dead. But whenever Rogue is on, 6 cards on the draw, you've seen reductions take place. I think it's fair to say that he won't be feeling too confident this turn, Sot.
Yep, as long as there is no colossal mess made this turn, you could imagine.
And we saw RDU waving his fingers around during Bunnyhoppor's turn, so I think he was sat doing the turn in his head, right, preemptively, just working out exactly what he needs to do, the ordering of the spells, of the cards, just to make sure this is guaranteed, and I'm pretty certain this is in fact guaranteed.
Chillin', yep, 2 mana left, Garrote for 1 mana, play 1 more Battlecry, plenty of health to be able to tank a hit or 2 of fatigue if needed. Nice and easy.
We'll just wait for it all to kick up. Like, there's bleed 1, there's bleed 2, so on, so on, so on. RDU is going to take game number 1 over Bunnyhoppor with this Rogue, and again, it's one of those decks that very tricky to play well, but you can understand why players are trying to learn it and get good at it, right? Because yes, Bunnyhoppor got trapped a little bit. He didn't really have the best game of his life with that Fell Demon Hunter, but it wasn't even like, it was almost effortless for RDU on the Rogue then. He had a really good opening hand, of course, but you just you just do the 1-2-3 play, right? It just makes sense, keep it simple, straight to the groats, game over.
It's always
Every time it cracks me up. I hope this has been done on purpose.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely crushing it in Europe GM.
Yeah. I'm just hoping, like, you know, a few years' time, we still get that image pop up now and again, and I'll love it. It'll make me laugh. But yeah, the D3 is surprisingly powerful, and a bit of a different way you see the game play out, where RDU went for that pretty early with the help of prep. And I think it paid off quite a lot for him in this one.
Yeah, it did. It certainly created what is the most difficult turn of the game, I would say, with Bunny top deck to Skull, which made the turn infinitely more complicated. I think, you know, as I talk about it more and I, you know, realize the context of a kept card that isn't being played probably being field contact, I start to become a bit more sympathetic towards the line. Because, you know, I was talking about how it pans out over 3 turns and how 2 skulls and 1 board clear happen on those 3 turns in a lot of worlds regardless. But the difference in Bunny's world is that the clear comes down into the field contact turn, and he essentially trades 6 or 8 health for that luxury of being able to clear up the field contact, right? Which is worthwhile, A, because Rogue doesn't care that much about whether you're at 18 or at 30. They're going to kill you anyway. The only problem is when you start getting above bigger numbers than 30 with armor totals. And secondly, because Demon Hunter has so much healing potential anyway. So probably the way he went about it, giving himself that option for a quicker spike on a Zai or a Jace, something powerful off the top. He also had the opportunity to just hit Immolation or Arcanist off the skull, by the way, which, you know, could have been the best of all worlds in that scenario. Right. So there was a few ways, I think, where he recognized probably best to play for the high roll in that scenario.
Well, as we move on to game number 2, we are going to have Bunnyhoppor on that Quest Shaman and RDU over on the Handlock. And again, we've kind of, after taking a nice trip with Psycho's version of Handlock and talk about the Rune Mithril Rod, we are back to a much more standard version. I mean, I think this is pretty much the ladder version of the deck, if I'm honest. Nothing's really standing out too much for me here, and it's just solid. It kind of ticks all the boxes. Unless you have very specific tech in mind, I think it's an absolutely fine deck list, even for like, high-level competitive play like now.
Yep. 1 Mortal Coil, 1 Happy Cow is certainly the standard way that most lists are going these days. People messed around with different one-offs but have ended up on Mortal Coil overall, which I think, as you say, is the standard list on ladder. Any questions?
You know what question I'm going to ask, even though I've worked it out. But it makes no sense.
Did you actually get there?
You call him Battleground Battlemaster Happy Cow because Happy Cow's in Battlegrounds.
No. It's better than that.
Because you do a Happy Cow when you win.
No.
I don't.
Gia was calling it BGBM all day yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So when you BM in BG, you Happy Cow your opponent. It's the BGBM.
That's kind of what I said. When you win, you use the Happy Cow. As in, like, use the emote when you win. Close enough. But I got there. I deciphered the code.
Sure.
And I'm not saying it. So, yeah, moving on. It's still Lotheb, right? I'm going old school.
I mean, inexplicably, Lotheb didn't stick. I don't know how that didn't happen, but here we are.
Imagine how I feel. I came up with the best deck name in the world, and then they nerfed it into the ground.
True. D6 got over. He got that one over.
I know, yeah, I love it. Yeah. Bunnyhoppor there, though, kicking it off. Bloom available. Nothing too crazy to bloom into yet. Normally in this list, you're looking to go for that the Canal Slugger, right? But still, just having Serpent Shrines to build a board, Primal Dungeoneer as well. It's not too bad of a start in any way. You considering coin like Primal here?
I think so. I mean, I think he's considering it. I'm not necessarily sure whether it ends up being the play, but when you have these Lightning Bloom hands, you always have to consider, you know, having the access to particular nature spells, having the access to Canal Slugger, for example, just as a big high-pressure minion that you can hit off Primal Dungeoneer if you do hit the nature spell, and just what your optimal unlock turn looks like. And yeah, it looks like Bunny does have a plan here that involves Primal Dungeoneer. Unlucky.
It's going to have to be tap again for RDU, although the Neophyte's very strong against early Shaman turns. I just think he has to dig a little bit deeper here.
Agreed. Yeah, Cult Neophyte going into 3 against Shaman is insane most of the time. It's very rare that Shaman spends turn 3 not playing a spell that costs 3 mana. It can be, you know, Marsh Spawn or in different lists, the Entrap Sorceress if they've played spells on the previous turn in the former case, but most of the time they are looking to Serpent Shrine Portal, Feral Spirit, all that kind of business. But this deck says it on the tin, Handlock, build up the hand. And that comes from live tapping through your deck, which not only builds up your hand size, discounts your nulls, gets you a Netheron for 1, but also every tap is bringing you ever closer to those big swing turns with Giants. And big swing turns with Giants is what wins this matchup.
Yeah, they become incredibly difficult to clear unless the Shaman players had access to some very specific Discover options. Now though, honestly, Null into Touch doesn't seem terrible. I wouldn't even be overly upset at seeing Null into Tour Guide tap.
I'm not getting any younger.
Maybe the Tour Guide tap's a little bit better. Just to, again, like I said, the emphasis I've seen some players put on card draw, it has been pretty incredible over this past weekend. It's like just tap at all costs, basically.
You could also have tapped first, played the Tour Guide, and then just touched the 2/2, right? Which gives you the 0 mana tap for the following turn, which I thought was quite interesting.
We hunger for vengeance.
Oh, okay, and this is another option. Actually using the Thalnos Touch here. Still kind of increasing the card draw. My only slight worry is the nulls start to get a bit more expensive at this point.
Yeah, but you are playing a Blood Mage, right? Which kind of replaces itself in hand. So that's a card in hand, essentially.
Yeah.
I do think if you're going to play Touch instead of Null, I prefer the play I suggested by a little bit over this one. I think, you know, my favorite play was what I suggested, and then Null with RDU's play was my second favorite. The Blood Mage does look a little bit strange here. Just for the luxury of killing a 2/3 instead of a 2/2 doesn't really feel like that big an upside, right?
Also as well, this puts relatively poor minions in the Raised Dead pool, which is something to bear in mind as well. Now RDU's got one Tour Guide, which I think is fine, by the way. I think, like I said, tapping's important, so if Tour Guide gets in the pool, whatever. But the Thalnos, not really great in the pool at all here, and he's just going to drop the Flesh Giant. Say this is as good as it's ever going to get. Can't wait for it to be cheaper here. That 3 from Bunnyhoppor, he has Serpent Shrine, he has spell damage. He has a lot of stuff, actually. These cards are very good here at the top. I imagine he's going for some kind of Zapper Serpent Shrine, right? Maybe even Perpetual?
Yeah, Zapper Shrine Flame at least clears it up, leaves him with 2 mana to play with. But the problem is he's just hit his unlock, so does he really want to be overloading for 1 million again? I mean, I suppose with a Charge Call in hand, maybe?
Yeah. And it kills the Giant, right? Which I think is priority 1, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think lack of luxury.
Is that face?
That is face.
Oh.
There is little time.
Spell Rush. Pretty interesting here.
Yeah, so he's going to go wide and just not care about Soul Rend. Claw Machine!
Claw Machine just gets to double trade with minions here. Very nice. Okay. I think that turn took multiple diversions because originally I think he was planning to just dump everything face, get a big minion from the Charge Call, draw a card off the Voracious Reader, right? And just go everything face because he'd be left with 2 cards in hand at that point. But then because he hit the Fell Rattler off the Shrine Portal, he was like, hang on, well that creates some interesting options now. Now I could just trade in and Perpetual Flame this turn. Then he was like, nah, I'm going to Charge Call anyway. And then he hit a Rush Minion again off the Charge Call. So because that drew him a card off the Claw Machine, he didn't end up drawing a card from the Voracious Reader, but he was able to kill the Giant instead. Like I said, just multiple different iterations that turn that Bunny went through in the space of pretty much the rope, because that's when he started playing his turn.
Here now, RDU has the choice between Tour Guide Tap Giant or just Giant here. I think I'm actually okay with just Giant. It means he... Oh, the tap's going to get him closer to 10 though, right? And he has Bristleback.
Yep. And he's fine. If he didn't have these 2 rush minions, then we can talk about it. But I think infinite health right now. And that's why you do that.
Well, if you told me that before, Saul, then...
Okay.
Guidance for lethal. Is there any way? He can't, right? Because he wouldn't give him 2 bolts.
Right.
But it would be funny if it did.
Oh, bolt overload, right? Or overdraft, sorry. Would have got there.
Oh, overdraft, yeah.
Yeah. It was a microscopic lethal outbound. Canal Slogger is big enough here, right, to trade into one of the giants.
Yeah, it's 8 attack, right?
You've got the claw machine buff. 9? Is it not +3/+3, the claw machine buff?
Oh, you're right, yeah. So if he... Can he just clear this whole board there?
Always little time.
Not quite. He only has enough mana
just
for
off,
one of the 1 mana spells and the Slogger. Oh, really? He rips this first before the Slogger, that's interesting. Which means he's not going to slog, I imagine. I see, because whichever of the 8/8s he runs into, he can then use the Molten Blast and the Lightning Bolt on instead to clear up. This is a good little spot. I like this. Draws a card again off the Voracious Reader by spending more cards from his hand. Kinda cute.
Oh, great pickup though for RDU. Get all sorts done this turn.
Blood Mage. Touch your Blood Mage? That worth?
Don't know.
10.
What if he just soul rends?
He could just
Push 8.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'd be tempted. And then you can soul rend like Neophyte? Or even like touch soul rend Neophyte? Wants to just reduce it down a little bit.
Yeah, he's just going to use them in the more standard way here instead. Does limit him from being able to do the Bristleback stuff this turn. I think if he had Scavengers in hand, that's the more card to be able to drop outright, whereas Bristleback's not a particularly big deal here. So I'm fine with this. And he has 0 mana this turn. Quickest turn you will ever see Bunnyhoppor play, and Battlegrounds Battlemaster coming down for the Wind Fury kill. That is going to be 2-0 up for RDU in this position now. He is a single game away from taking that spot in the finals. It will not be against Gabby, as I was setting up at the start of the day for that chance to take revenge. But I think still, it'll be a little bit of bragging rights for RDU to have picked up the win for the week with Gabby going out in the semi-finals.
Yeah, and a really big win, at least now for RDU in that game. But it just showed off what exactly you want to do in the matchup, right? Get the Giants down relatively early. The tap into extra Giant, obviously, after the Raised Dead was huge. Waves of threats, and Bunnyhoppor actually did a really good job at defending himself, but it just wasn't quite good enough, right? There was just enough removal for RDU to push the 8 face that turn, which for me, regardless of whether we talk about Drain Soul, Soul Rend, you know, Touch Blood Mage, blah, blah, blah. As long as the Giant got to hit face past the taunt, I think the turn ended well, right? And that's exactly what RDU did. And then that, of course, opened up that lethal opportunity where Bunnyhoppor had to, like, pull so much out the bag to defend on the previous turn. He had no mana to do anything this turn, so give a handlock 2 turns in a row, you're probably going to die.
And I think that turn was the most questionable there from Bunny. I think he played the game very well overall. As you said, he did a very good job defending. I mean, worth noting, he was also threatening lethal basically every turn against RDU, forcing him to heal, because he also pushed an enormous amount of damage in the early game. But that one turn there, yeah, with the Canal Slugger still in hand, which I'm presuming, unless I've missed something very obvious, was buffed by the Claw Machine and would have been big enough to be able to trade into the Giant. Because he was going to skip that turn almost regardless. I'm not sure if he played one less Overload card, whether he had 1 mana, or whether he was like super far over with the Perpetual Flame. But because he was going to skip that turn, it felt like maybe the extra security from the healing would have done a job there. But in the end, I think very minor quibbles in what was a very well-played game. Just a very bad matchup for the Shaman overall, and I think Bunny did his best to find creative win conditions, particularly with that Voracious Reader and the myriad of rush minions that were appearing in the mid-game. I think he diverted through that turn very, very well. But things going to come down to the wire now, and it is the pet deck for RDU, the deck that he says is the best in Conquest in the Celestial Druid, that's going to have to pick up a win here. And I think it's going to have a pretty good time in doing so. It's got one miserable matchup against the Handlock, which is just Celestial Druid but better, as you will see, I'm sure, at some point if RDU goes for the Celestial alignment. The other two matchups, though, Fel Demon Hunter I have some opinions on. I think it's a little bit closer than people think it is, but still probably favoured for the Druid. And then the remaining Quest Shaman is, I think, a very, very, very good matchup overall for Celestial Druid.
Yeah, we did see Gabby take a win against Celestial Druid yesterday versus Yala, so it's doable as Shaman, but definitely not a matchup you want to play on the Shaman side. But you are right, for now we are going to go into the Hand Warlock versus Druid, and it's just tough, right? If you Celestial and there's just Giants in hand, you're suddenly facing down a huge board. You have to make sure you're not exactly dead, and I think the biggest problem is, in a lot of cases, the amount of time it takes you to get to Celestial, the Warlocks probably played a threat or two at that point, and dealt some damage, so then the follow-up can be really, really strong.
Yeah, at the very least, Knolls, right? I think maybe an Etheron, like an Etheron, if you hit backfire, can come down super fast as well, but I think Giants are generally a little bit too slow on average. Like if the Druid hits any ramp, they can probably alignment before a Giant comes down, but it doesn't matter, because if there's a Giant in hand, it does, like if you alignment, it's then coming down for 0 on the turn afterwards, because that's how Giant works. But certainly Knolls can be a good amount of pressure in the early game. And I think we've seen multiple Druids, with you talking about how this seems to be the new We Draw the Nuts deck in Europe. I've seen multiple players on stream, I think yesterday and perhaps the day before when I was casting, just have double Lunar Eclipse in the opening hand to be able to kill the first threat from Handlock, which is actually a surprisingly big deal as well.
Yeah.
A Netheron or Null coming down are basically invincible to the vast majority of the deck for Celestial Druid.
Yeah, and the biggest hurdle with this deck, at least from my experience, is the turn you Celestial, you can't be dead. Right, and that sounds very silly, but being able to kill a threat early on that's going to start pushing damage if you don't kill it means it's way more likely that by the time you play Celestial, you're going to be dead on the backswing. So yeah, being able to clear them off is going to be huge here, and so far RDU has ramped. He has Anacondra, he has the Auctioneer, he just needs a bit of Nourish to have a good time right now.
He also has the Luna, which is part of the dynamic of what Bunny is thinking about here, because the rest of this turn looks very straightforward, right? Big old Knoll on the left-hand side of your hand, drop that down. If you play a Bristleback here, and it gets to attack next turn, then your Giant costs 5, which is the exact amount of mana you have. And I think this is a gambit that you can certainly go for against Druid, but it does get punished by specifically Lunar Eclipse in the way that Null kind of doesn't in the same scenario. Wow, she says nothing instead.
He says no.
So by holding on, he's going the other way entirely, where with 8 cards in hand right now, he's just going to go tap a Netheron Null on the following turn and use the Netheron as his Giant threat.
And it will be generally going into the turn that alignment can be played, right?
I got the best deals anywhere.
But to play it, RDU has to find it first, which is, I imagine, why we're seeing this play here, cycling through some of the deck, trying to just get to that alignment on curve with the Anacondra follow-up. It's not looking too great now, though.
Oof! Actually, this is really straightforward. You just play the 4 Cthulhu pieces over the course of the next couple of turns, and then top deck Cthulhu. Easy.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Next game?
This is, however, awkward for Bunny as it interrupts his plan. He wasn't really expecting to have to deal with a minion this turn, and now he kind of does. After he plays this Anetheron, his null will cost 2, so in having to Mortal Coil or Drain Soul this Auctioneer, that means his amount of threatage for the turn is a little bit more limited.
Hey, actually quite like Bolt. Will Bolt proc Quest? I'm not sure what he's at, unfortunately, sorry. I'm just thinking, like, will the damage and the heal help towards his giant more than, like, Drain Souling this? Because I don't even think Bunnyhoppor's health matters in terms of whether he wins or loses this matchup.
Not particularly. No.
I think I just use the mana and bolt it down, try and progress for an extra deal 3, heal 3.
Might be very reasonable, yeah. He's tapped on 2, 3, 4. He'll be on 2 out of 7 on quest step 2 right now, I believe.
So it will proc it, right?
I think so, yeah.
We go for cool and value card draw more than the health reduction, or mana reduction, sorry, should I say.
We'll have to make a note of where he was next turn so we can evaluate the unstable play. Sure, this Nourish now going to be used to draw more cards for RDU because, again, this is the problem, okay? He has now hit alignment, but I was going to say he did just use 1 Auctioneer, 1 Nourish, which are the premium cards to go alongside the rest of his hand here. He's still in a world of trouble, don't get me wrong, because he's taking a colossal amount of damage here, but still.
I wonder.
So tap a giant looks like the most straightforward option here from Bunnyhoppor. Or he could just play giant and is he on 10?
He is on 10, but
on
again,
10, yeah.
it's one of those scenarios where suggesting to deliberately burn a card isn't actually the dumbest thing in the world.
Yeah. Trying to think if it gains him enough. Being 6 cards out and having backfire.
More bones.
Kind of tricky, right?
Okay. Seems fine. Just going to hold out on it. This puts 21 in play, which means that, of course, Celestial Alignment cannot be played this turn.
I concede.
Because RDU would just be straight up dead on the backswing, and that is not going to be good enough anyway. We didn't even get to see what miserable 8-drop RDU summoned there, because as we all know, the only thing stopping him from being a multiple-time world champion is how unlucky he is. He is simply the best player in the world, so when he loses, he's just low-rolled. It's just the facts of the matter.
Simply true. He's going to be on his Druid once again, though. But again, I think for RDU, you don't really go into that matchup as Druid and expect great things to happen for you. I think you go in going, okay, hopefully I can just steal a win. But I think in general, it's fair to expect a rough go of it. So he did take the loss versus Bunnyhoppor. I'm just waiting to see what Bunnyhoppor's going to queue in next. He, of course, has that Fell Demon Hunter and the Shaman to queue into. And the winner is... Shaman, there we go. Yep, okay. It's going to be the Shaman first, because I know you want to talk about Fell Demon Hunter in the matchup, but of course, we'll talk to it if it happens. And we'll talk about Shaman for now. This is a tough matchup, and one RDU's no doubt feeling much more confident in diving into.
However, it's a matchup that Bunnyhoppor has already successfully navigated with extreme skill in Grandmasters already. By essentially never overloading. Somehow, in Quest Shaman, he managed to play the game, pressure his opponent, and just not overload, apart from the one turn where he overloaded 3 times in one turn, so that he would then unlock that and actually manage to get enough pressure going against Celestial Druid to win the game, which is kind of absurd when you look at it. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm making this comparison of this meta's Bunnyhoppor to the previous Quest Mage, Quest Druid metagame that we had in Grandmasters before, where it just seemed like when you watched Bunnyhoppor play Quest Mage, it was a much better deck than when anyone else played it, because he had these little intricacies, right? He was the first person to show us Quest on 2 to activate Marshspawn, which was a play that I hadn't seen before and took me an embarrassingly long time, about 7 seconds, to work out what it was even for, even though it's patently obvious when you see someone do it.
What's obvious as well is the sheer amount of ramp that RDU has access to now. Wild Growth on 2, Wild Growth on 3, has double Bloom with that fungal as well. Has all the mana in the world. He has enough mana to play the next game of Hearthstone with.
there's anyone that could play 2 games
There you
of
go.
Hearthstone simultaneously with the same mana pool, it's RDU. I mean...
I told you, he's got enough mana to do everything. Now, semi-serious question.
Yeah.
Is there any value in wild growthing or fungal first or second? Like, is there any big benefit to either here? Because you imagine he wants to fungal at some point, right? Because he doesn't have the Celestial Hand.
Right.
Time waits for
This
no
is
one.
true. He does essentially have Celestial Alignment on demand on any given turn. He would skip a turn in doing so, because he would be overloaded so much with the Lightning Blooms. But still, you would imagine if you play Alignment, and then, a Shaman plays 1 card a turn for a turn or 2, right? Even potentially less if they're overloading. You could then potentially get there with the wild growths and so on after the fact, and then just get into your good enough Celestial Hand manually since you have Fungal Fortunes. The problem with that plan is that Fungal Fortunes doesn't draw you the cards you actually want.
Right.
The Anaconda and the Auctioneer. So I imagine a little bit of patience is worthwhile here, just to pick up a few extra resources, which is where the Fungal Fortunes came from.
There's a Celestial. Bunnyhoppor leans back, he's like, right, okay, Celestial's happened, or at least the first one has happened. I think it's always important to remember that a second Celestial exists in the deck, and can be just as backbreaking as the first one. So, the first one's gone down, there's Nourish. RDU has to skip the turn, of course, because he was overloaded due to playing it. But after this turn from Bunnyhoppor, it's game on for RDU.
And as was Bunny as well, because as I was talking before about how Bunny was very carefully managing overload, it was not in the forefront of his mind on that turn, right? Where it was bloomed out and played for 5 at the end of it all. So
Nature waits for no one but me.
he did get caught with the punish by also skipping a turn. That's about as an aggressive a push as he could possibly have made here with 2 mana. He might still choose to go with Serpent Shrine Portal to protect the more reactive card in his hand, even though on average the Slogger is significantly more damage.
I wonder. Now let her end. There is little time.
I do like this. This is just a ton of damage, though, put forward. RDU 2 mana now. Could just make a whole lot of turtles.
Yeah, certainly could be Nourished Turtle power here. But I imagine with the amount of ramp he has in hand, that Nourish is probably better used for card draw, which limits what he can actually do this turn. Obviously, Nourish unique in the fact that it gives you the mana to use immediately on the same turn.
Could start with Nature Studies and just go from there, right? Because that's kind of free right now.
True. If that gives him a different source of card draw, he could then have the luxury of
Choose to
ramping with
nourish,
and
yeah.
actually doing something more powerful this turn as well. Not a bad idea.
Growth.
Is it just overgrowth turtles in that case?
Deciding that because he'll have access to more mana next turn, a lot more mana, then the Nourish card draw will be enough to sort of progress his game plan, right? Because I don't think if he's just playing 1 Best in Shell and not using Solar with it, then that's not enough for him to win the game off the back, right? I think the Solar double Best in Shell can buy him a ton of time, but he's already past the point with that. So this is it's just a stopgap.
Exactly. It's a play to not take 11 this turn, and then, with maybe more card draw off the top, maybe with the Nourish can hit Auctioneer or Anaconda or whatever, and then you're off to the races, and then instead of solaring Turtles, you end up solaring Cenarian Ward when you get further into your deck, right? Or even solaring the 3 damage AoE, if that's what you really need to do if a very aggressive board comes down.
I wonder.
Are we at Serpent Shrine charged call time yet?
I think you're about as all in as you can possibly get here, right? I think you've done everything, including the Lightning Bloom.
Sure. Yeah, as long as damage and big minions appear this turn,
Yep.
It's as good as Bunnyhoppor's going to get it.
Yeah, Lightning Bloom still does gain you 1 mana, particularly in that scenario where you're actually unlocking the Lightning Bloom as well. Now Perpetual Flame can come down, you can choose Guidance with this as well, and then mop it all up with Charge Call at the end of it. Guidance for Vivid Spores, thank you very much. Oh, it's just the best card in the game.
Yeah, this is really nice. And actually, the fact that he had that 1/1 totem was a big deal there, right? That made everything pretty clean.
Oh, champion! Really? Really? Really?
Well, that's what you were worrying about.
That's not a Stormwind champion? Are you sure?
No. That's 3 1-mana cards.
But are you sure?
Pretty sure. Come on. Like, look at this! Whatever you can do, I can do better. Or similar.
Alright, picks up the maul. So that puts an end to that nonsense.
Okay, so does have Solar Scenario Ward now. The slight problem is he knows that Bunnyhoppor's got more and got Solar of got a Scenario Ward of his own. It's not going to be quite as simple a matchup as you would normally expect at this point in the game.
Yes, he is also ludicrously overloaded this turn. That's why
Oh, that's true. That's true.
particularly concerned about how many cards he was going to have access to. It really felt like because of this dynamic, right? How good is a handful of 1-mana cards when you don't get to play a Hearthstone turn this turn? It felt like just having the biggest board that pushed the most damage possible was more important to me personally. But I can see how if he feels like this game is going to progress a little bit longer, that he can get some value out of some of these draws.
This would have already gone face. If it was me.
Goal here for Bunny is just not to get alignmented again next turn. Because if he does get to play with a good chunk of this hand, he's in business, right? Like, potentially some of the stuff he can do.
In a weird way, because he's not overloaded next turn, if he does get alignmented, he's got to look at how good Vivid Spores can be, right? Like, that is pretty solid. Obviously, these 2 minions would probably trade 2 away here from RDU.
I would imagine so, unless he has an extremely compelling reason not to.
I mean, RDU is ready to open a wild growth shop right now. He does have quite a couple.
Dropping one of the growths makes the Bog Beam free. Nice little spot there from RDU. Can dump a few more cards, drop the Mally. Curious as to whether he wants to use one more wild growth, perhaps. Nope, choosing not to. I think having, 2 mana left in a situation like this is always great because it gives you the mana to solar something, whatever that something may be.
Those are some good options. I agree. Yeah, sorry, I was distracted by the options. The Celestial, so that's 1 mana, but then Solar X, whether that's Scenario Ward, whether that's Destined Shell.
Even though you clearly were not listening, you did actually manage to pick up on the exact thing I was talking about, which is that's why the 3rd mana was available, because RDU didn't just want to solar something off his Malagos, he wanted to solar something and play Celestial Alignment all in the same turn.
I'm that good, I can see shiny things, get distracted, and still keep up with you.
And I'm that good, I know, even though you hit it incredibly well, that you weren't listening to me. So I guess we're both winners.
I heard something about Celestial.
Okay.
I actually did, I promise. Most of the time I don't listen though.
No, I mean, it's totally fair.
And that was a much better Scenario Ward than the one RDU had earlier. Just compare the 2 sets of minions, right? The difference couldn't be bigger, and now Bunnyhoppor only 1 mana. Does get Lunar Eclipse plus X, but is that realistically going to be enough? That was not Solar Eclipse, and that's just a plain 8A right now. How much damage is that? 9, 14, 21?
Yes, indeed. 21 damage coming back the other way.
I mean, at this point, with only 2 mana available, RDU could just, ramp Destined Shell, and I think feel very comfortable.
Sure.
Purely because this Dreadlord, even if it dies, it sort of plops out a 5/5.
Oh, I love it when things plop out 5/5.
He's not even going to ramp.
Really?
I guess.
That's the best in show.
Whoa! Wait,
Trade.
I'm very confused.
I'm also very confused.
I'm just, why not ramp and trade, and then he could have played a card? Even if it was just Body of Cthulhu at that point, it's still 6/6 on the board. Like, what are you expecting Bunny to be able to do with 2 mana? And a lot of different ranges of health.
Oh, Canal Slugger, Vivid Spores now, I would imagine. Does this even do enough? He gets to take 12 off the board and heal for 12, so he'll be at 17 facing 9. Yeah, pretty comfortable actually.
And if Adi had actually played Best in Shell, it wouldn't have been... Oh, I guess he could have traded into the big one first, so he still would have healed, but he wouldn't have been able to remove as much damage from board, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to just... Yeah, he's not even overly setting up a Cthulhu last turn either, right?
No, I mean, playing the Nourish on that turn would have more aggressively set up Cthulhu.
Yeah.
He could have, like, nourished Turtle, Body of Cthulhu even, right? All in one turn.
Yeah, and even then, he would have had more mana active to go, like, Wild Growth, Heart of Cthulhu or Eye or something this turn, right? And just try and get the mana up.
True.
Lethal? Question mark? We're going to get some ramp in.
Yeah, he needs to get the ramp in because, of course, he does have to, with both alignments already played, he has to manually get up to the 10 crystals he needs to be able to play the Cthulhu that's going to be played shuffled into his deck. If, of course, that actually becomes a relevant factor this game, which remains to be seen.
Yeah, the way you normally get there is with the second Celestial, right? If you're going to really pop off. Not that you even see it happen that often, it's just something you can do. Reset everything back to 1 again, including the Cthulhu, if you can shuffle it in early enough.
Right.
But for Bunnyhoppor now... He can,
significant problems.
Yeah, he can...
That he needs to clear this entire board.
Oh... Wait, doesn't that do anything, right?
Nope.
Overdraft, more trade. Okay, no.
Oh, of course, because the overdraft, that's actually very clever.
That works.
Yeah, I like it.
I was sure that something had to be going on smart because Bunnyhoppor wouldn't just completely whiff a turn like that. But I couldn't see it because we can't see the overload that he's on at any given time.
Exactly. I completely missed the fact that Overdraft was going to ramp him a mana there, essentially, allowing him to do 3 things because with any 2 things in his hand, he could not survive.
He was stuck.
There. But yeah, Bunny saw the line. Very nicely done.
Now, what Wild Growth, Heart of Cthulhu. Is that his last Cthulhu piece? It is, right?
So, yep.
So then he can actually just trade the Best in Shell. I actually prefer playing the Best in Shell, actually. It sets up lethal, right?
I think if you're ramping twice, you can trade it. I guess it's very close either way. You either set up lethal on board or you just increase it by 1 to hit the extra Cthulhu.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
There you go. That works.
Time waits for no one.
Now, unfortunately, I think for Bunnyhoppor, I don't think he can do enough, right? Because of how low his actual health is, that he can't put enough minions on board to, like, make a difference because his health is 3 right now.
Precisely, yeah. I mean, humongous Razor Leaf off this portal.
Oh, yeah. Now we're talking.
You investment opportunity.
Marsh Bonds.
Another one and get another humongous Razor Leaf. How much have I added? 20? You're still dead?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
And Marsh Spawn, of course, like, way worse than you think because the spells you get don't cost 1. So that's like really going to have an extremely low impact here. And Bunnyhoppor will know that even if it's not next turn, with RDU on approximately 1 billion health, even if it's in 2 turns, maybe even 3 turns time for RDU to draw that Cthulhu, like Bunnyhopper's unlikely to be able to realistically fight back here, but he's still going to try.
Yeah, absolutely. He's playing against Cthulhu bottom card, right?
Yes.
That's his win condition. Build a 30 health board before Cthulhu is drawn, which is the bottom card of the deck. That is his win condition from this point. But with Cthulhu top card,
Boom.
absolutely no chance.
Yeah, headset comes off. Bunny can do, I'm pretty sure, basic maths. Now, are you going to get the victory? I will say, I'll just throw it out there, that I think RDU might have done a thing or two to make that game harder than it needed to be in a few moments, but he got the win and he was still very comfortable. It was, especially towards the end of that game, I don't even know what would have had to happen for him to lose, but still, I think there were just moments where RDU let the game continue for a little bit longer than it needed to, but in the end, Sol, he did get the win, and that means he is going to be going through into the finals.
I would agree entirely with that assessment, but I think, you know, overall, his pride this week has clearly come from the lineup, right? He thinks he has the builds, he has the matchups, he has the anti-meta build, right, in the decks that he's brought, and so far that is coming to fruition because, you know, if you're even going to say, well, arguably you can make a couple of mistakes and still win the matchup, well, that probably means you have some good decks.
Pretty
in your
sick.
lineup, right?
Sounds like a lineup I want.
Yeah. Send those codes to Raven immediately. He needs them digits. But yeah, I think it's been a decent performance overall from RDU. Again, I'm hopeful to see much more of Bunnyhoppor this season because I do think he's playing some lights out Hearthstone right now. And I think, you know, Europe in general is in a great place because the amount of players that we have who are very engaged in the game, really enjoying the meta and playing it extremely well.
And I think, to be fair, we've kind of already seen more of Bunnyhoppor this season than we did in a good chunk of last season, at least. Anyway, so he's having a great run. Top 4, strong finish, bagging those 3 points. It's going to be pretty fantastic. It does mean we have RDU and Psycho left over. And both players bringing slightly different lineups here, but both bringing Mage, which I think is a factor in their success. But then RDU going for that, like... I'm just telling the truth, Sol. I don't care if you like it or not. But then RDU, of course, going for the sort of Druid and Garrote roguelike.